for Nepal and India, for us, it's Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's words, Ekla Chalo Re. Ram Rahim. When he was arrested here and I was ambassador there was a lot of talk about Preet Singh, and one day Manisha Koirala telephones me and says, Ambassador, hordes of journalists are hanging around my place and they want to know that Preet Singh is coming to me. Who is Preet Singh?
Pakistan, everybody knows they use their ISI to work out of Nepal.
The Pakistanis use their embassies for these kind of activities. Is not just in Nepal but all over the world they do it. Games countries will play. For us to ever let our guard down vis-a-vis Pakistan, that's out of the question. And it doesn't mean only on the border, which is directly between Pakistan, but worldwide. And certainly in our neighborhood.
Regular changes of government, frustration of the people, there is this simmering anger, and they're going to talk about the good old time of the monarchy.
Nepal has seen an accelerated element of globalization, and hence aspirations are way ahead of what realities can actually deliver. Most politicians in Nepal are on the same page. They do the same thing. There is a musical chair. This is a musical chair which is kind of annoying people. So there is turmoil. And it requires mature political handling.
Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, he often blames India.
The easiest card to play is an India card, because you can then rally, something not good is being done to me, and you win votes.
Is it of interest to India that there's a return to monarchy?
The monarchy hasn't been really good for India in the past when you look at it. After all, most of the issues that we talk about, including overtures to China, including to Pakistan, etc., got made in the times of the monarchy.
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching or listening to another edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. My guest today is the former Indian ambassador to Nepal and European Union, Manjeev Singh Puri. We shall be discussing the current situation in Nepal and the way forward. But first, here's a short explainer. Since the beginning of the year, Nepal has been in the stranglehold of pro- and anti-monarchy protests and frustration with the current system of governance. The former Himalayan kingdom has witnessed political instability ever since the abolition of monarchy in 2008. The fledgling democracy has had 14 governments in 17 years. These leadership changes have meant lack of development and rampant corruption. People are fed up with poor governance and are demanding the return of the monarchy. So let's find out what underlying factors have contributed to the recent resurgence of pro-monarchy sentiments in Nepal, and how significant is this movement in the current political landscape, and why should it concern India? Thank you, sir, for coming to the podcast. I have already recorded my introduction and had a short explainer just to tell the viewers, those who are not familiar with politics of Nepal. But what I want to ask you is some basic things like what is happening currently, what is the political situation in Nepal? You've been ambassador there at a very crucial juncture. But did you see at that time that this is the situation which is coming, that this regular change of government, 14 and 17 if I'm not mistaken, these regular changes of government, frustration of the people, sick and tired of corruption, lack of development, that there is this simmering anger, and they're going to talk about the good old years, the good old time of the monarchy, whether it was good or not, this wanting to go back. Did you see this happening when you were posted there?
Smita, thank you very much, and I'm honored to be on ANI's talk show. I just want to tell you this. I'm not sure about the last question that you said, or the last statement that you said, that that's what they are hankering for. It would appear to me that much of it is our perception here, because that's what we think that they are hankering for. They are hankering for change. There is a degree of frustration among the youth there. So let me take you back a little bit. Look, Nepal went through, as you know, this Maoist insurgency, etc. Nepal also went through, it's been a great beneficiary of globalization. Till the 1990s, most Nepalese didn't have passports. And then Nepal started issuing passports. Today, more than a fourth of the country, maybe even more than that, is overseas. And I'm not talking about India. I am talking about not just the Gulf, but the United States, Europe, Southeast Asia, Australia, Japan, etc. It has among the highest remittances to GDP ratios in the world. this country has changed. It's opened itself to globalization. And one of the interesting things that has happened is ordinary Nepalese have a sense of empowerment as a result of all of this. And that is why, in a sense, in 2006, there was a change. The monarchy had to go. It was technically abolished by the Nepalese parliament, with all political parties, in a sense, voting for that to happen. Nepal has changed. Now, what happens in this modern world is that your aspirations rise also. And your aspirations don't get easily fulfilled in almost every political system. So we are seeing this across the world, isn't it? A kind of rising frustration of the people, some with globalization, some as a result of globalization, etc. And we are seeing it all over Europe, the United States, no different at all. So let me also make a point to you. When we talk in terms of going back to the good old days, that I don't know. That they want change is because they've already experienced some benefits. Look, Nepal was a least developed country. It still is technically, but it's in the process of graduation. What have the last 20 years done? It has actually not just empowered them in terms of politics and societal level, but actually Nepal has done much, much better. So change of governments, etc., I know. We think that instability of governments, but you have the Italian example. The number of changes in government, it's a G7 member. So let's just look at it. Most politicians in Nepal are on the same page. They do the same thing. There is a musical chair. This is a musical chair which is kind of annoying people. Rent seeking is an issue there in Nepal. So there is turmoil and it requires mature political handling. And I really wish the politicians in Nepal would say that we have got democracy, but to consolidate democracy and to consolidate democracy in the geography in which you are between India and China, you need to act much more maturely and you need to understand that people's aspirations have risen. You can't just have the same old game all the time.
But there have been pro-monarchy protests. When the Gyanendra came back, there were huge crowds. Were they engineered then, if you're saying that the pro-monarchy sentiment is not all that strong? So are there groups which want the monarchy back and they are the ones who are getting the crowds, or is it just organic?
So look, my understanding is nothing is really organic in all of this. King Gyanendra, the former king, was only in Pokhara. He wasn't returning from any long-term exile or something. He lives in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
He came there. There were 5,000-6,000 people in a pro-monarchy thing. At the same time, there was a demonstration by the so-called Republicans, which were 20,000 people. Now, I don't want to go into it. There is no doubt in my mind that there are many factions in Nepal, many sets of people who talk in terms of old was gold, the good old days, and they identify good old days with monarchy. And therefore, certainly, he becomes a kind of symbol for them to talk in terms of all
A
of
rallying
this.
point.
Yes. And to them, if you don't have a rallying point, how do you work on the frustrations of the young people? This is a way of channelizing. So there is certainly a segment of the population which looks at this, and this becomes the way in which their frustrations get segued, etc. But on the other hand, it is at least my convinced belief that the Nepalese are now quite firmly wedded to the idea of democracy. That democracy has its ails. That's a different matter. And they want some kind of perfection, which isn't very easy. So we don't know
what is the
happens.
model that they're looking at, which they think? See, we all have in our imagination some kind of a model, those who have grown up in democracies or those who see functional democracies. So, what kind of a democracy is a model for the Nepali people?
Well, multi-party democracy is not something that they don't want. But what is it that they want? Everybody thinks that democracy is a panacea to good life, everything going very well. What are the examples that we see in front of us? European countries, the United States, perhaps not so right now. There are very few people in the world who think that everything that's happening there is great. Although there are many people who draw lessons that look, what is happening there is perhaps a natural corral. But basically, it's European ideals. And why do we look at them? We say, look, 200 years of democracy, these countries have done so well. This must be the outcome of democracy. But in much of the developing world, democracies, etc., have brought benefits. But have they brought European levels of life being so good and wonderful, etc.? No, it takes time. But Nepal has seen an accelerated element of globalization, and hence aspirations are way ahead of what realities can actually deliver.
But unemployment, inflation, frustration with all these issues, lack of development, how long is an aspirational generation supposed to wait for all these things?
Well, people have to wait quite some time, but they have the right to bring about change. And we've seen it in the last couple of elections. Parties with young people have come to power. They've also got elected. But then democracies have their own ways of, let me say, bringing you into the fold. And then people remain frustrated in any case at the end of the whole thing. As I said, Nepal has seen more than a modicum of development. It isn't that it isn't.
Okay.
We look at developments as large roads, tall buildings, big cars. That's not necessarily. There's been a great deal of empowerment. The ordinary Nepali today is far better off, much better, whether it's through remittances or people going overseas, etc. All of this is there. But you tend to take all this that is there for granted and you want more. And because they are a society which has seen much more of globalization, their aspirations of the average Nepali are, let me say, much higher than the average Indian.
So, who do they compare? Like you said, everybody looks at the European Union or the European Parliament or the European countries to say, okay, this is an ideal that we aspire for. As far as the Nepali youth is concerned, who do they want to become? Do they want to become like Pakistan? Do they want to become like Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka? Who do they see in the neighborhood and say, okay, this is a functional democracy. These are the people who are doing well in their country. We want to become like them.
Smita, the ideals that are sold in Nepal is Nepal should become the Switzerland of the world.
Okay.
All right? That's what they look at. They recognize.
That's not bad.
Yeah, they recognize that India is a long-standing functional democracy which has given them the entire ideas of multi-party democracy. In fact, helped bring that about in Nepal. They recognize that very well. But on the other hand, their aspirations are well beyond wanting to be just a middling developing country. They think that they are very well positioned. And because you go overseas and you work in those environments, you see so much possibilities. That's what they want. It takes a very long time. Let me also say this to you. Nepal's geography, which, their politicians and others may see is greatly advantageous, is actually a very difficult geography to be in. It's a hilly terrain, very difficult to manage. There are all kinds of geographical impediments. And being among the two largest countries in the world, with their own sets of geopolitics, believe me, it requires truly matured leadership and a leadership that does two things. One, manage these two plus the global relationship, the Western world, and B, take care of the aspirations of people which are important, recognize them, and in some senses recognize that it can't be politics as usual, me, the chair, and myself, and my family and others. You have to understand that.
So let's talk about the two powers then. The Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, he often blames India. So what is the India card out here?
So, Smita, the India card is not Mr. Oli and so on. The India card is a very old Nepalese thing. The Nepalese have this identity politics. And this is not from today. It's from the time, late 1700s, when Nepal became a unified kingdom. They have always wanted to have themselves seen separate from India. You won't perhaps know, but in the great darbars in Delhi, they never sat with the Indian princes. They sat with the foreign representatives. And from the 1930s, the British representation in Kathmandu didn't report to New Delhi, it reported to London. So, they've always looked at themselves as an independent country, which may have had good relations with the British power and so on and so forth. This identity is their biggest set of issues, and the politicians keep exploiting it. Let me tell you, what our fashions are, what we eat, they love. There's no problem. They come to India. The number of Nepalese working here, doing well, running companies is phenomenal. All that is true. But at the political level, this becomes the biggest thing. And for politicians in votes, and it's not from today, it's been right from the beginning, the easiest card to play is an India card, because you can then rally a large section of the population that, something not good is being done to me, and you win votes. Mr. Oli used that so-called blockade of 2015 to be able to rally things. Let me tell you, 20 years earlier, we always perceived him to be a friend. When we signed the Mahakali Treaty, he was one of those persons who spoke up in its favor. So things change, politicians change, but Nepali politicians know that they have the India card, and when they need it, they are not hesitant to use it, because in their scheme of things, uh, keeping the seat, keeping the job, rent seeking, those are much more important. That's the nature of this particular politics in Nepal.
So is the scar of that blockade still there?
Look, it's not there, but it's not such a long time back that
It
people
was
have
before
forgotten.
you were there, or
It was just before I went there. So I joined there in 2017. This is a 2015 thing. But because it is there in the lives of those people who are still around, you can't expect them to forget it. He doesn't play it necessarily, but since then he's moved on. He's been prime minister 2 or 3 times. Look at what he managed to do in terms of that map, where, let me tell you, all parties ended up voting, barring 1 or 2 MPs. Everybody voted, because when you play nationalist cards, it becomes very difficult for people to say no, even though they realize that it's not the right thing to do. In fact, it wasn't the right thing to do. It isn't the right thing to do. Something which is completely irrelevant. But when you are in this kind of politics and you play this politics, which is A, rent seeking on one side, and B, willing to do anything for the sake of keeping your job, then I'm afraid these things happen. This is why you require matured politics.
When you were saying that Nepal, a lot of Nepal's identity is that we are not Indian, we are different. Is it somewhat similar, like Nepal is to India, like Canada is to America? Is there similarity?
You've used a very good simile in the today's context.
Yeah,
In
that's what.
fact, if I may say, the only other country Mr. Trump referred to as the 51st state was Canada, not Mexico,
Yeah.
even though they share an equally long border with Mexico. Yeah, you're right. Russia and Ukraine. Think about it in the same way. Look, there is this particular issue, and we need to recognize this. So, civilizational ties, civilizational linkages are one thing, but the world is also about nation states. And nation states have their own imperatives, their own governance. Remember, Nepal is perhaps the oldest nation state in South Asia. Because when Prithvi Narayan Shah unified them at the end of the 1700s, this nation state got created, and the then nascent but then growing East India Company started recognizing it and playing along with that. So they've always sort of prided themselves, and they've taken advantage of, the way global politics has evolved over the last 200 years. And we must also recognize this. We do. In the foreign ministry, in the power centers, people do. But, popular perceptions, and they can't change, and rightly so. That's also something we have to understand. It's civilizational links.
Yeah.
We are one. When you say this to the Nepalese,
They
they
don't
don't say it anything to you, but no, it's not so. I can tell you a very simple thing. If you go to Nepal and we go and start talking publicly, delivering speeches in Hindi, I am very sure that most people understand, but they reply to you in English. That even though their English is broken and halting, etc., people would like you to speak Nepali. Almost none of us do. There are Indians who do, in Nepali is a national language in India, and so on. But that's the nature of this. They are no longer wedded to Indian soaps and operas, etc., etc.
Okay.
Oh, the Brazilians, South Koreans, they are very much seen by people, etc. So we need to understand that these are issues which are introduced by the politics to keep up this identity politics and the game, but then they become naturalized in the society. And,
But how come that when you talk about East and West Punjab, when people meet, it's like "Asi ekko hi haenge." And then you speak Bengalis, the East and West Bengal, they're somewhat similar. You speak about to the Tamils, the Sri Lankan Tamils and the Indian Tamils, they talk in Tamil. How come Nepal doesn't feel that towards the Terai region and the others?
so the answer is quite straightforward. In all these particular cases, the nation-state division is known and is absolutely clear. And how many people really think that it doesn't exist? Everybody. They may have a feeling that we should come together culturally, extend. But how many people think that this should dissolve or it's not there? Not many. Not from those countries in any case. How many Pakistanis think that they shouldn't exist? I don't think there's anyone. Bangladeshi, does anyone think? So we have to understand this, because we are the large civilizational player out there. Nepal is the smaller civilizational player there. Now their links with the people in the Terai, let me tell you, Nepal's identity is not forged by them. We think that's very important. It is forged by the people from the Pahad. Essentially, the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, of course, they have old links with people who went from India. So the Uttarakhandis and people from Himachal, those kind of people, they are the ones who forged this particular identity. And for a long time, this particular thing has been inherent in them. And that is why that's the power structure in Nepal. Mr. Oli comes from those communities, Mr. Prachand comes from that community, Sher Bahadur Dyoba comes from those communities. That's the community which has the power. It has always had the power in Nepal.
And so it's not really the people of the border region with Bihar and UP and the others.
Well, they should get much more of their due, given their population size, etc.
Okay.
But the nature of polity in Nepal is that it is dominated by the Pahadi community, as they say, and for them, it's their interests which matter the most, and that's the way it has been right throughout.
So currently, what is the nature of the disputes that we have with Nepal with regard to the border and things like
Look,
that?
our biggest set of challenges with Nepal, and we'll come to these, is that we would like the Nepalese, ideally, to have a bit of a lean towards India. We would like them to be conscious of our concerns, in particular security concerns. Letting the Chinese a kind of free rein in this country is something we would like them to be careful about. Other than that, what other? One is this Kala Pani, this map business. Fortunately, it's on the back burner. And, once you do something of the kind that Mr. Oli did, constitutional amendment, it's very difficult to roll this back. But we are all playing this very well. The other sets of issues are normal issues that happen, which are issues of trade. In my personal opinion, we should be more liberal. But, many in India think, no, you've got to be more careful. These are, after all, decisions that governments take. It's not individuals' views that matter. Trade, connectivity, each and everything. But the Nepalese political psyche is such that for each of these, they look at them all from the political angle and the question of safeguarding their identity, safeguarding their kursi and so on. It's very important. Not that we don't do it, but, we are so large that all of this appears relatively not the headline-making news. But for them, any and everything that we do becomes a headline-seeking news. That's
So why are they
important.
choosing this aggressive posture, the political establishment, with regard whether it is their currency, whether maps, changing it? Why are they continuing with this? Is it beneficial to them at all?
In my opinion, not at all. But let me tell you this. How did the map business came? When it came about, Mr. Oli was facing a tremendous political challenge within his own grouping, which included Mr. Prachand, who said, we had a deal. You would step down. Now it's my turn. He didn't want to. And so he kept trying. He went twice to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no. So he played, in a sense, the ultimate card, which you can say the neutron bomb, brought about this resolution. Nobody could say no to it, because the card is so nationalistic. It obviously disrupts relations. Can you imagine cartographic ideas that you are talking about being reduced to constitutional amendments? It's a very serious set of
Could
matters.
India do nothing to stop that from happening?
When the card is played at that level, 2 or 3 people could get up and vote, but many won't, because what would happen to their constituency back home? Forever, they would be tainted in a particular manner. Remember, the anti-India card is the most potent weapon in terms. That doesn't mean people are anti-Indian. People are all pro-India. They are happy to come to India. They come to our hospitals, doctors, eat food, see films. They do everything. But in this nation-state game, this is a very important element, because they think it's a kind of identity issue. He did the same thing this time with the note, because, the moment he feels that there is something. Now, I don't want to say that the northern neighbor, Chinese, etc., may not have prompted it and planted an idea. That's certainly possible. But at the end of the day, the man saw direct benefit to himself as a result of doing it. And this is in the nature of Nepalese politics.
So how dangerous is the Chinese influence in Nepal for India?
Look, we have to be mindful. There should be absolutely no doubt about that. The fact that they are today all over the country because they have greater abilities, financial abilities to be able to do things, etc. But we need to be mindful of that. My answer to all of this is that you need to recognize a much more challenging environment in the border with Nepal and with Nepal in general, and therefore step up action with Nepal. This is a time for us to step up because we have so many natural positivities with Nepal. We need to work. We need to understand that there will be challenges, and it's not just the Chinese. Believe me, perhaps your greater challenge at the moment, China is a natural geography. We have no choice but to have this challenge, is the westernization in Nepal and the fact of Christian missionaries in Nepal, which are also being propagated by South Korean missionaries. So when we add all of these, it is a heady mix, and I'm leaving out Pakistan and whatever little they may be doing. This is a heady mix, and it requires, in my opinion, much more interaction, much more willingness to, reach out to those people, develop links, etc., no matter that they exhibit a degree of making you feel frustrated, etc. That's par for the course. It is, in my understanding, extremely important for us to engage with Nepal because in various ways, societally, don't we feel good?
Yeah.
Isn't there this commonality? It's our people. And so therefore, it means that for our governments also, you need to go more than the extra mile.
Okay, when you're talking about westernization, the impact of that you're talking just culturally, or can there be more than that happening in Nepal? For example, if I was to just say that we probably didn't see this happening, or we left some doors open, or we had all our eggs in one basket when it came to Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh, and we didn't see that Muhammad Yunus is going to be this kind of a challenge to India strategically, or whatever you want to call it. What happens in Nepal? If you're saying there's such a Western influence in Nepal, so we have the China angle to it, we have the Western angle to it, we have the missionary angle to it. It's a heady mixture that you're talking
It
about.
is. You perhaps are not aware that, while Afghanistan was still brewing, etc., the fact was that the Nepalese had the second largest concentration of global NGOs in Asia after Afghanistan. And you can see this all over the place. So it is a heady mixture. There's no doubt about it. And I think one needs to recognize that we and the Western world are not necessarily on the same side on everything. Let's take
Sure.
this very simple case. This business of what would we like. All of us would say if Nepal, in some senses, restates, reinforces the fact that it's a Hindu country, we'd feel more comfortable, we'll feel much better, isn't it? Why? Although we are a secular state, we are a country with the largest Hindu population. We would feel a little better. There are questions of perceptions in all this. Who are the people? I don't think the Chinese, it's the Western world will be completely. And some of these ideas that happened at the time of the adoption of the constitution, I mean, without doubt, whether the people had studied in India, whether they'd gone anywhere, these are ideas which have come even to us from the Western world. That's how these developments have happened. But they are now a fact and reality. And so, therefore, you need to understand. And it's not necessarily that everything is on the same page. I am a very old and old-fashioned believer. I say it, many people sort of don't agree with me, that for Nepal and India, for us, it's Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's words, Ekla Chalo Re.
Oh, okay. So now, if the great game was played in Afghanistan historically also, do you see that in the coming decades a similar kind of, or somewhat same, similar kind of a great game could be played with China and the Western powers in Nepal too?
I think that time is a little over. Think about what happened. The first sets of interactions with the Nepalese after the Second World War, in Nepal, there was only this British representation. The Americans and the French extended recognition to the Nepalese government literally months before we opened our embassy and the ambassador finally went there in December 1947. We were able to stave them off from bringing resident missions there. But the fact of the matter is, those were the heady days of the Tibet annexation, etc. And much cooperation happened. But after that, with the US-China situation post 1971, where was their interest in the matter? Things are looking interesting for them. They are worried. But on the other hand, let's also remember where the Chinese have reached today. Where are they? They are no longer a country that you can relatively easily play. Their economic might is tremendous. Their physical infrastructure abilities are tremendous. So many things have happened. And the reality also needs to be recognized. For me, this is a challenge, but certainly not an unsurmountable. There's no question of unsurmountable. It is a challenge where we still are the big players. We just need to ensure that don't get in any way, don't get overawed by any kind of challenge. This country is too important as a society. We remain engaged. After all, we are now the largest society, the fifth largest economy, on our way to the third. Our abilities are going to change. Our abilities to meet aspirations of those people will change. Smita, I'll tell you something very interesting. When I was ambassador, obviously I had the opportunity to meet chief ministers in states around. And many would ask me, what should we do? My simple answer was open malls on the border. Go to Siliguri, see the malls, they're full of Nepalese. Now I am very happy to see in Gorakhpur there are malls. People come. Keep this connect
And there was a
alive.
time where Indians used to go to Nepal to buy
So this is
jeans
very
khareedne.
interesting.
My first Levi's came from Nepal, if I'm not mistaken.
Don't worry, so did mine.
Yeah.
At the end of my school and between college, there were 6 months, and two of us kind of trekked our way all the way to Kathmandu. And the basic idea was to buy one pair of Wranglers. And to have milk made,
Yes.
this condensed milk, which was very expensive.
You're talking about the 1980s or, late 70s, I'm
late
guessing.
70s. I'm
Late
a little
70s.
older than all of them. Yeah. But why is the change? Because we made policy interventions. We are no longer a protectionist society. Nepal continues to levy 300% duties on cars, etc. There was a time we used to worry that cars get imported from Nepal. Today, they are worried that cars get imported from India.
Wait, what about the petrol crisis? Is that over?
No, so we are all Nepalese petrol is imported
From
to
here.
India. Now we have a pipeline.
Okay.
So in that sense, this whole idea of that has become passé, isn't it?
Okay.
And I'll tell you something very interesting.
Sure.
This pipeline was done in kind of record time, very neatly done from Barauni in Nepal to the Nepal.
Barauni in Bihar.
Bihar to the Nepal border, where Indian Oil has a big station. I want to tell you, when the two prime ministers jointly inaugurated the pipeline, and it was done virtually, Prime Minister Oli said, "Thank you very much. The price of petrol in Nepal is reduced by so many rupees per litre." Look at the difference that it made. And this is what the connectivity with India does. It affects directly. The politicians may continue to play their games. However, the people notice.
And see, when China, the whole Belt Road initiative, that has entered roadblocks in Pakistan because of the Baloch problem. What about what they're doing in Nepal? Is there a sense of insecurity among the Nepalis that China is, they have aspirations of not just having political power or strategic power in the area, they are expansionist. Do they fear that from their neighbors?
They know that. Fear among the population is a difficult word to talk about. They certainly know it. And what do they do about it? They know that they need to keep them also a little happy. We need to understand, if we have a 1,500 kilometers border with Nepal, they have 1,400 kilometers on the other side. And the Nepalese always tell us, you don't realize that it's important for us to keep a relationship with them which is on an even keel, because we don't have the abilities in case they decide to do anything which is truly untoward. And let's leave out the question of anybody else coming to anyone's aid. That's not what happens in the real world. In any case, you suffer the consequences of that.
Yeah.
So this has been an old theory, not from today. Now, they know the BRI. Up till now, if you notice, the Nepalese haven't taken any loans. They were very careful. This time when Mr. Oli went, they signed an agreement which is a little fudgy on the question of whether it's loan or grant, etc. They tend to say, we will be very careful on loans. The Nepalese have been careful on loans and have now recently even said that we won't take any loans from anywhere because our abilities to repay have become very cringed and they are very difficult for us to do, etc. So they are careful, they know. But they slip up also. And they slip up also because they see immediate advantage of some kind or the other. This has happened in the past. I can tell you, in one of the previous visits about a decade back, Mr. Prachand and as well as Mr. Oli went to China. They bought several aircraft which do jet aircraft which do short route flying from China. Those aircraft become white elephants because there are no parts available, there are no cockpit crew, there's no people who can fly them. So they know all of this, but they also are very conscious of this kind of balancing act. And
How difficult is it for them to keep this neutrality element going?
So this thing about neutrality, if you recall a long time back, there was all this business about Nepal as a zone of peace, this, that, and the other. Look, these are issues which have a lot of legalistic angle. Nepal would love to look at this, but they also recognize that they are, in their opinion, maintaining a kind of neutrality, that we are. We have a civilizational lean towards India, but we also good relations with the Chinese. We have good relations with the Western world. They think that they're playing a very good game. But as I said, this is a very tough call. It requires a great deal of matured political handling. And when you say that game I'm doing well, but internally I'm losing out, then it becomes a case where opportunities arise, but more than anything else, degrees of instability, etc. in your country, which you need to handle more carefully and with a much more matured manner.
Okay. Nepal found itself on the FATF grey list for terror funding and for money laundering and all that. How did that happen? Is it just corruption and things like that which happened? Why did this happen to Nepal?
Well, rent-seeking corruption, certainly, but also lacks infrastructure and lacks abilities to be able to enforce these things. You look at these money laundering laws. They require a huge deal of compliance paraphernalia. Do you have it? No. And Nepalese have been very proud for a long time that, we won't rely on other countries, central banks, etc. We'll do it ourselves. Well, so there are opportunities. And they've had to work hard on all of that. But it's not very easy. Remember also, they become easily usable by characters who want to do this kind of stuff. And they are conscious of it. But again, capacities are also limited.
So naturally, I'm going to come to Pakistan with this. When you're talking about characters who use these tracks, I have to come to that. Pakistan, everybody knows they use their ISI to work out of Nepal. Their border strategy with India involves influencing, sending arms into India via Nepal, sending drugs, sending counterfeit currency via Nepal. So explain to me, how did you deal with this when you were there, and what is the current status now?
So look, first, I don't want to overplay this Pakistani business. I think India has very robust infrastructure in our borders in terms of understanding what's happening in Nepal. And credit to all our security agencies and others that they manage this quite well. We also have good cooperation with the Nepalese police forces and others in being able to deal with it. Look, games countries will play. For us to ever let our guard down vis-a-vis Pakistan, that's out of the question. And it doesn't mean only on the border, which is directly between Pakistan, but worldwide. And certainly in our neighborhood. And the Nepalese used to provide a certain amount of inroads to them. But, after that famous IC-814, there are no direct flights. It's not physically such an easy matter. Not that it can't be done. So there are a lot of things. But the fact of the matter is that we are conscious, cognizant of this, and I think that we have arrangements and so on in place which take care of this particular thing, just as we do with other parts of the world, keeping ourselves secure in the country.
Look, India has a very large embassy out there. You were the ambassador. But so does Pakistan. And everybody knows that Pakistan ISI operatives also function out of their embassy.
Smita,
Why?
they
Why
don't
do
have an
they
embassy. They don't have an embassy of our size or our abilities. Let's be very clear on that.
Okay.
They have a small little place not too far away from where we are located.
It's supposed to be really large, no?
It can't be.
Okay.
And the Nepalese at different times have, toned them down. Look, we are in a completely different league, and thank God for that. I said, we are civilizationally linked to them. Now, that the Pakistanis use their embassies for these kind of activities is not just in Nepal, but all over the world they do it. We have to be conscious about this. We need to be conscious, and we are. We are very cognizant of all of this. You are alluding to this famous film IC-814 and what happened there.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to get into all that. Those are specifics, and many of us are privy or not privy to it.
But several things, right? Even the RAW guy, that Rabinder Singh, who escaped, went via Nepal.
No, but that has nothing to do with the Pakistanis. It was the Americans who smuggled him out.
Yeah, but
we have an open border.
That's a route, right?
No, but we have an open border. So you and I can go into Nepal by just showing our voter identity card or your passport to prove that you are an Indian. Aadhaar card doesn't prove that, right? He was an Indian. what do you want me to say about who took advantage of that? It wasn't the Pakistanis.
So anybody inimical to Indian interest will use that route.
So let me tell you something very interesting. Let's laugh a little bit.
Okay.
You know, there's this Ram Rahim.
Huh.
When he was arrested here and I was ambassador there was a lot of talk about Honeypreet Singh or someone.
Yeah.
And one day Manisha Koirala telephones me and says, she was then in Kathmandu, says, Ambassador, hordes of journalists are hanging around my place. And they want to know that Honeypreet Singh is coming to me. Who is Honeypreet Singh? I myself didn't know. I said, who is Honeypreet Singh? Found out. She said, what is this going on? Why are people coming to me? So look, this is old stories. They are well known to all of us. We are all cognizant of this. But does it mean that we should stop Indians from going across with the simplest of things? No. Because this people-to-people relationship is the one that binds India and Nepal together and us with Nepal. We want our people in our villages to have this Roti-Beti Rishta. We want all this to continue. That you have to be cognizant about the people with malified intentions taking advantage. Well, that's what nation states are about.
For our international viewers and those who don't follow, don't understand the Roti-Beti Rishta, can you please explain to this?
So we have civilizational links. In many parts of Nepal, marriages take place across the border because they are people of the same ethnicity, same caste, same religions, they know each other. And so we have this entire concept of what you call beti meaning daughter, and the exchange of daughters results in familial links, etc. And roti is that we eat the same food, wear the same clothes, we go to the same temples, we feel very comfortable. It is a synonym for civilizational links. And we talk about this in the Terai. But believe me, these links are also there in the Pahad regions, in the Uttarakhandi regions. People are crossing over, they have relationships on either side, and so on. Now, many of the infrastructure in Nepal has tremendously improved. But otherwise, if you ask Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Dioba, he would tell you that when he started his college to come from far west in Nepal to Kathmandu, he had to go via India. That's the way it used to be.
True. So, one question I have is about many of the countries in our neighborhood don't like, because we are the largest in South Asia, they don't like this big brother attitude that we have been accused of having. Is that there in Nepal too? And how do we guard ourselves from becoming that?
It's very much there, and it's something that you have to accept. Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, when she was EAM, used to be very much at pains to say, this is not the big brother like the Western big brother, but this is like the bada bhai, the elder brother who cares for you, etc. Look, having said this, the realities of the world are those there who want to be critical will always find this to be a reason for them to be critical. On your own part, my belief is as we are growing our economy, we are doing much well. We need to be able to push this back into Nepal. They know us. For us, we are an automatic plus for them. They know us very well. They take advantage of all the opportunities there, and rightly so. We should be happy at that. We should also use our leverages as we are growing our economy to reach out there so that these aspirations, to the extent possible, I know they can't be met completely, to the extent possible, we keep this up so that the civilizational links, the Roti-Beti Rishta, is strengthened and kept much more, and that we remain a country. I have no doubt that we will remain a country of interest, love, affection, etc. But also that as a nation states, on the economics of things, you keep yourself bound together, because finally one must accept money matters.
Money matters. And infrastructure development of Nepal is very closely linked with the investments that come from India. Right?
It is, but now they have a lot of other avenues. Right from the very beginning, while we did some roads, they invited the Chinese to do roads. This is not from today, from the 1960s onward.
But hydel projects and things like that also.
You know, the Nepal had the first hydroelectric project in the whole of South Asia somewhere at the beginning of the 1900s. Then they did nothing. And the first one which may come on steam will be our Arun 3 in the next few years. Believe me, it's taken us. They were politically obdurate, but we were also not perhaps pushing. I was very happy. You asked me what is my achievement. In my time, we laid the foundation stone, the two prime ministers, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Oli, for the Arun 3 project. This project, in my opinion, it has two phases, two parts to it, taken together 1500 megawatts. It has the potential of turning that part of Nepal, slightly northeast of Kathmandu, in terms of the economics there. It can turn the trade balance between the two countries. It can do a lot in terms of empowerment. Now, new hydel projects are coming up, etc. We need to be active in all of them. That's particularly important. Connectivity, in my opinion, is the key to keeping up this relationship, because we are changing as a society. We're becoming richer much more. You're not talking in terms of taking a bicycle and crossing the border. You want to fly across, you want to drive across. Let's at least do up to our border. The Nepalese are doing at
But
their end.
the Nepalese media, there is an anti-India
Of
narrative
course,
also which happens there.
there it is a given.
It's a given.
You must almost take that. Why? Because it flows from this identity politics to the way politics has been conducted in Nepal. Right from the days of the monarchy, we want to do some distancing. You have a policy, we will think about whether that policy is good for us or not. We won't automatically say, yes, sir, 3 bags full. And that's the nature of the way all of them have been grown up. And so it comes natural to take this position. First the questioning, then if possible, say no to
Editorializing
it,
on that,
etc., etc. It comes that. But that doesn't mean that each of those who writes this doesn't want to come and have your chole bhature, come here, buy the sarees.
It's somewhat like that, na? Yankee, go home, but take me with you.
Yeah, why not?
Right?
That's perfectly fine.
So it's on social media as well as traditional media,
Absolutely.
the legacy
Yeah,
media
yeah.
there.
Of course, with all this empowerment, people going overseas, seeing the world, the rhetoric becomes sharper. It becomes much more, let me say, polarizing in various ways and so on. Earlier, you would have 2 newspapers and hardly any radio station. Now everybody is on Twitter and Instagram, etc. You're saying what you want, even though you're doing the exact opposite yourself. But that's the nature of human beings and the nation state versus the civilizational state.
Oh, interesting. When we were talking about the Terai region, one question that I wanted to ask you was about the Maoist insurgency. In India, the government of India is making claims now that by next year, Maoist insurgency will be over. The Maoist problem will be over. Already in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and the other areas, there are just few pockets left in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, in some areas in Bengal. What is this current situation in Nepal with
Well,
regard?
they were integrated into the political setup.
Yeah.
Mr. Prachand, who was the leader, became prime minister. I think he's been prime minister 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different thing. There are some small elements of people with an extreme left ideology who keep popping up at different places. I remember when I was there, we have this huge Arun 3 hydroelectric project. At one point, they said, oh, we'll do something there. They couldn't do something. They would invariably issue some kind of threat against the Indian embassy.
Okay.
Could they really do anything? The answer is no. But yes, they would do small sets of incidents, including with other Nepalese politicians, some serious, some even with violence. These happen. Nepal has an issue with far left extremism, but it's a small contained issue.
Okay. A question which I wanted to ask was that, if I was to come back to the monarchy bit, is it of interest to India? Is it in India's interest, rather, I should say, that there's a return to monarchy in Nepal, or is it none of our business?
Smita, there's a general saying here, and many of our colleagues, all of us who grew up with the idea of Nepal being a democracy. And that is something that I now think that the people of Nepal are completely with. So, what exactly are we talking about in this business of return to monarchy? At best, I think our ideas are what you may call constitutional monarchy. There's a monarch, but it's actually a multi-party democracy, etc.
Yeah.
I don't know about all this. Many people fear what all of this means because the past experiences have been that you start off in this sort of a manner and then the monarchs try to consolidate power and authoritarianism. The monarchy hasn't been really good for India in the past when you look at it. After all, most of the issues that we talk about, including overtures to China, including to Pakistan, etc., got made in the times of the monarchy. Did the monarchy over 200 years deliver great Switzerland, Nepal? No, they didn't. So there are a lot of issues. This is a tough call. It's really a Nepalese issue. They need to deal with it. Remember something very interesting. Unlike most other places, when the monarchy gets abolished or is no longer there, the kings, etc., leave. They move to exile. The former king lives in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
Very much, has lived there all throughout.
Correct.
And over the last 15, 20 years, no issue with all of this.
But they always have one foot in somewhere in Britain or
I'm not sure
in
that the
right?
former king Gyanendra has any foot anywhere else.
Okay.
I mean, he sometimes goes to Bangkok for some medical treatment, etc. I don't think
Really?
so. Yeah,
Okay.
but that many people do from Thailand because they also come to India in big way. But it depends on people having their own preferences for hospitals, etc. So, point I'm trying to make to you is, I know that there is within us a kind of feeling that monarchy, Hindu state, etc. would be good. I would like to parse the two and say, yes, I understand where this comes from. But it's really for the Nepalese to take these kinds of calls and decisions and their political leaders to be sagacious about it. That Nepal is wedded to democracy, that to my mind seems now an absolutely accepted thing. Even the agitators, etc., no one says that we don't want democracy. In fact, the crux of it, their frustrations is they think that the three people who have been monopolizing prime ministership for the last 20 years, some kind of change in that might itself bring
musical
about
chairs.
a kind of end the musical chairs, let some young person come along. People feel that change is the answer to hope. Hopefully.
Interesting. I'd like to conclude on that, but then I have to ask you about your tenure out there. What are your memories from your tenure there? What were the good parts and the bad parts?
So, Smita, I was never posted to Nepal in the course of my career till my final posting when I went to Nepal as ambassador. I had not dealt with Nepal as the desk officer or anything. I had been to Nepal once in my official career as the Deputy Chief of Protocol accompanying Prime Minister I.K. Gujral, which was for a multilateral summit. I think it was a SAARC summit or something like that. I therefore carried no baggage. I had been to Nepal as a young boy after my school, trekking to Nepal and enjoying myself out there, carried all those memories. Nepal was a revelation to me, without doubt, because all the misconceptions, etc., that I had about Nepal, developing country, poor, this, that, when I reached there, of course, it had all the challenges that you have, slums, whole lots of areas where, haphazard growth has taken place, etc., etc. But I realized and very quickly realized that Nepal has changed as a result of globalization and its opening to globalization. Today, every ordinary Nepali is empowered, has an idea about the world and knows that. Everybody carries a smartphone. Let me tell you, if a senior functionary in India goes to a village, he has a meeting, does anybody produce a record of discussions to be signed there? As India's ambassador, I was very happy to travel through the length and breadth of Nepal. Any village I went to, anywhere I went, they would have a very nice meeting and produce a record of discussions for us to be signed at the end.
So there was a note taker.
There was. That country has changed in its society, it has changed. It's a very beautiful country. It's very welcoming. Also, in some very interesting sense, while being a conservative society, everybody going to the temple, even the communists go to Pashupatinath. There is no issue on any of those counts. The fact is, there's a degree of liberal thinking which is there. It's not just, okay, when it's sundown, it's Nepal must. It's not just that. There are various things which have been imbibed now in the society. It's a changed and fairly empowered society. What it needs, in my opinion, is a political leadership which is not just enjoying this particular thing, but is matured, recognizes that this brings challenges, because now you have an empowered population whose aspirations are high, difficult for you to achieve, but where you need to be able to do this. We're seeing this in Europe in some senses today. Nepal and Europe, a far cry, but aspirational ideas sometimes tend to be very similar. They need to become much more cognizant about that.
Okay. On that note, thank you so much, sir, for spending this time and explaining Nepal 101 for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita.
Thank you for watching or listening to this edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you have seen this or heard this. Namaste. Jai Hind. Click here to watch the previous episodes.